Right, well, we are on the hour, so let's get into our next session, navigating the seas of security, CIS Controls, and Microsoft Teams. Over to you guys.
Cool.
Super, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be as a speaker here at Teams Nation. Very exciting times. This is the session that Marijn and I prepared for basically this year, the second time we are delivering this session. I am not quite sure if we're going to take the whole 40 minutes. It's pretty like a level 100, but let's see. If you have any questions, I would suggest that you put them in a chat. I will try to monitor it as we go. And without further ado, let's jump into it, right, Marijn?
No. We need some further ado first. So do you want to talk about where we gave this session the first time? Where was our exact geographical position in the world?
I don't even know what was the exact geo position, because we were somewhere at the Caribbean on this.
Exactly. So we were somewhere in the Bahamas, next to Jamaica and Haiti, on a very large cruise boat, and that was the M365 at the seas. So that's why.
Yeah.
That's why we also have the title here, Navigating the Seas of Security, because we just thought that that was so perfect for that specific session. And it just rings very well, rings very good. So we just wanted to keep that here as well. So that was just the shameless plug of us saying, or at least me saying, I was on a cruise in the Caribbean when I was talking about this in the first time. So anyway, doesn't matter. Without further ado, this time.
Yeah, let's start with introduction, very short introduction of who we actually are and what's the deal. So I'm pretty much known as Kasia. Kasia Nowicka is my name, but known as Kasia. You can find me on X and LinkedIn as well. I have been previously solution architect. I have an Office 365 trainer back in the days. I worked with the whole ecosystem for the last nearly a decade. At the moment, I'm actually responsible for product marketing at a company called CoreView. What else I can say is that I'm based in Germany. I'm Polish, but I live in Germany, very close to the Dutch border. So that's about me.
All right, cool. And this handsome fella is me. So my name is Marijn Somers. I put a little description in how you pronounce my name because so many people get it wrong. Call me Margin or Martin or whatever. It's all fine. If you mispronounce my name, I don't care. If you just call me, hey, you, that's fine. I will answer to that as well. I don't care. As long as I know that you're talking to me, it's good enough. I've been doing mainly SharePoint for the last 16 years, last few years, Microsoft 365, mainly Teams. I've been an MVP for a few years as well, so there should be this little disc behind me. I'm a freelancer, do a lot of training, give a lot of coaching for people as well. If you know me, that's probably because I do this podcast together with Steve Dalby, M365 Distilled, where we talk about technology for 50 minutes, and then we always end with a whiskey tasting. We just yesterday recorded episode 140, so that means that I can call myself a spirit guide now these days. So because I've just tasted so many whiskeys. Anyway, doesn't matter. That is me. I also proudly call myself a Calipigian. If you don't know what that is, look it up, but use a in private incognito browser because that might be a way of not getting into trouble. And with that, let's dive into our actual session.
Right,
agenda-wise.
Yes, agenda-wise, we're just going to give you a short introduction to CIS. When we asked the room last time we did this session, how many people are familiar with the CIS? Actually, there were not many hands up in the air. I don't know if it's because of the geographical differences sometimes that we see Europe versus Americas. I don't know. When I ask about NIST, for example, then the full room basically raised their hands. So we want to give you an introduction. If you don't know, if you do know, let's just have that knowledge kind of like leveled. And then we're going to focus on how we can help you if it comes to securing your Teams environment. I'm going to show you maybe like a 2-minute demo is a big word. OK, I'm going to like try to show you how you can actually use what we're going to be talking about and show you in a real environment. And then we're going to start closing it off with a few conclusions. And basically, that's the plan. Marijn.
Yes, you are showing your screen. You are showing code. You are running code. And you're going to show the outcome. I think that is what an actual demo is. So it is a full demo that you're going to show. And I think it's also, and I have to say this is very cool. I was just planning to show you a bunch of really boring slides, and half an hour ago, Cass comes in and she's like, I'll just demo it. And I was like, what? And she just, yeah, I'll just do it. So if there is any question about who is the smart, brave, intelligent person presenting this, it's not the one with the beard. Okay, so important to know. So as Cass says, this is our agenda for today. And maybe we could even start with asking you right now if you know what the CIS is. If you know what it is, let us know in the chat. I'm looking at the chat. I'm looking at you, Paul Kazers. Do you know what the CIS is? Just a yes or a no would be amazing. It's fine if you don't know it, because we gave this session 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday, and on Monday afternoon, I learned for the first time what the CIS is. So it's perfectly fine if you don't know it. But okay, I see a bunch of yeses. Awesome, cool. So you're all way smarter than me, but looking at the names, I know you're already way smarter than me. So that's perfectly fine. All right, cool. So let's get into it. We've got a few takeaways. So the things that you should learn after this session is we're going to show you the CIS Controls framework. We're going to talk a little bit about that, why it is important. And then there are 13 configurations or recommendations for Teams. We are not going to walk through all 13 of them because that is going to be immensely boring. We're just going to grab a few so that you get the gist of it, so that you know what it is, how it's outlined, how you can work with them. And if we're going to show you 4, even including a demo by Cass, the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. And then we're also going to share a few tips on how to use CIS, maybe show you a little demo, not really a demo, screenshots about tools that you might be able to use and reference for this. So these are the things that we're going to do. So Cass, take it away. What is the CIS?
Yeah, so CIS stands for Center for Internet Security. It's actually a community that is consisting of many experts within the cybersecurity space. It acts as a non-profit organization. That means that all of the materials and tools, or majority, I should say, because some of them are paid, but majority of the resources that they provide are free. So that's a great start for you. You can simply go to the CIS website and you can look for certain either documents, such as, for example, the CIS benchmark, which is, we are basically, the base of our session is the CIS benchmark for Microsoft 365. And it has a mission. So it's, of course, the mission is to help each organization to implement best practices for securing the IT systems and data. That's pretty much it, right? So it's a community-driven organization that lets you use the resources and, let's say, start securing your environment to the best practices as a consensus from these experts.
Yeah. exactly. So this is the stuff that you need to talk to your CISO about. So if you're rolling out anything within Microsoft 365, for example, talk to your CISO, go over these recommendations together with the team, so you can actually see what they are. As I said, I recently learned about the existence of this, and I downloaded that benchmark for Microsoft 365, and I was like pretty amazed how thorough it is and how long it is. Yes, CIS.
So, if I can just build on that. So once you Bing it, Google it, however you want to do it, you're going to end up with a nearly 500, I think, pages at the moment of a document, PDF document. We can show you. When I demo, I can show you how it actually looks like. But it's going through all the services and apps within M365 and showing you the recommendations. And it's structured in a certain way. But before we jump into explaining how it's structured, I want to maybe say that Microsoft is getting better and better in providing secure by default concept, right? But as we know, every organization is different. Every organization is unique. So I would say, and this is my motto that I say at other sessions as well, it's great that there is some default settings that are already like kind of pre-configured when you start with your tenant or services, but it's not always the best. So it's good to have some sort of guidelines that you can then decide for your organization which one is best, which one you should follow, which one you should maybe not follow. So again, these are guidelines, and this is certain standard agreed by the community, but it's entirely up to you which of these you want to implement to your organization. That's it. Sorry, Marijn.
Exactly. And I think very important to remember about this slide, CIS is a non-profit external party. So this is not some kind of governance company trying to sell you something. This is not Microsoft trying to sell you something. This is a non-profit organization saying, we think this might be best practice. And as Cas says, if you're going to implement some of these things, look at it with a, just not blindly follow it, but look at it with a critical eye in order to see what you want to do, because depending on the kind of company you are, it might, you might want to have a different experience. That's all. All right, cool. So CIS, what they're actually looking at is, or how they actually work is they've got 18 domains, 18 areas of security that they are looking for. And I always think that this is a fun slide, because every time I show this slide, which has been once in the past, but that's fine, there's always at least one person in the audience giggling about penetration testing. I have to say, the first time it was me, but then some other people were also looking at it and going, okay, so, but just, I want to say we're not adults here in this room, so that's perfectly fine. But these are the things that CIS is looking at. So it's very broad. CIS is not just looking for M365 recommendations and benchmarks. They also build a ton of other benchmarks for other technologies. That's why you will also see things like network monitoring, like service provider management, account management, things like that, also here as well. Any additions, Cas?
No, let's move on.
No, let's go. All right, cool. Then the first thing that you need to do if you want to start working with the CIS benchmark for Microsoft 365 is you go to the CIS website, you go to their benchmarks, and you click that you want to download the actual benchmark, which, as Cas said already, is 500 and something pages long. And it actually talks about SharePoint, it talks about Teams, it talks about groups, it even talks about Fabric, which is fairly new. It's already in there with a bunch of recommendations on how to start working in a secure way with that, and what are the recommendations to turn on or to turn off if you want to do important stuff with it. And you will get this big PDF document that you can follow.
Right, let's move on.
Let's move on. All right, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to add here, if it's not been clear, that actually Microsoft is working very closely with that community. And so you can also find information about it on learn.microsoft.com. So it's not like it's a fully coordinated kind of effort for the greater good to spread in the easiest way some sort of guidelines to secure organizations. So again, you can go to Microsoft Learn and find more about it there as well.
Yeah,
that's it.
Cool.
Cool.
Cool. All right, very cool. And then we go to the actual recommendations. Now, this is a Teams conference. We are Teams Nation. So I just grabbed the ones that are dealing with actual Teams. Now, there's also a big chapter that deals with SharePoint, which is, as we all know, also a part of Teams. I didn't include that one in here just for brevity of this information, but if you want to check for yourself, download the CIS benchmark for M365 and you can see all these things yourself. Now, what these things this is a combination of two chapters in the CIS benchmark. The first chapter is the one about teams and groups, so that has to do with your group management. The other one is the Teams admin center. So these are all the items that have to do with Teams. So these are setting up your team, setting up your users, setting up Teams devices. Although I have to say Teams devices, that subchapter is empty. So I think that leaves room for additional contributors. So if you want to contribute to the CIS benchmark, have a word with CIS people, and I'm sure they will be very happy to have you there. It also talks about Teams apps. There are a number of items or recommendations around Teams meetings, because to be honest, that is 90% of the work that people do with Teams anyway, or at least my customers. And it also has a little chapter around messaging. So these are the bits that talk about Teams. As I said, SharePoint is also a big part of it. We didn't include that here. So this is the actual Teams part that we have. All good, Cass?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's go. So we have all these recommendations. So it's about 13 recommendations that are there for teams or teams and groups. Each one of those recommendations follows the exact same structure. Actually, the whole benchmark follows those same that same structure. Yeah. So of course we first have a title, which is this is the description of what the actual thing is. Then we also have an assessment status, if it is something that you can set up to be automatic, or if it requires some manual steps to actually do that. The next part that is there is actually going to look at what kind of organization are you or do you want to be. So that follows that falls out in two categories. Are you an E3 or an E5 kind of organization? Which license are you using? Because that might have some impact in some of the things that you want to set up. And then they also divide that into a level 1 and a level 2. So level 1 is organizations that just want to be practical and have a practical way of running their security. They have a clear security benefit, just the easy way. And the level 2 is the hardcore way. So if you really want to be very conscious about your security, you can look at the level 2 items. These are intended for environments or use cases where security is paramount and they act as defense in depth measures. Yeah. And a very important last item on this slide, it may negatively inhibit the utility or performance of the technology because, as we know, usability versus security, there's always a trade-off. And if you go to level 2 here, the trade-off might be tipping the scale towards security instead of user experience. Yeah, important to know. Next up, we have the actual description of what the thing is. So this is going to be our recommendation or the setting that you want to set. This is actually more information about what it is and why it is important. Then we've got the rationale. So that is more of why this is important, why you should do this. It will also give you an impact. If you do this, remember that people will not be able to do this anymore, or people will now be able to do that. So that's very important to know for your end user experience. If you work with XLAs, for example, experience level agreements, that is a very important bit. Then it will look at how can you check if this is already implemented, if this is already set up. So how can you audit this? How can you check if this is already set up? And then a remediation, how do you set it up? And the beautiful thing is they always work on the one hand with how to set this up in the user interface and how to do this in PowerShell. So if you are working for a large organization and you are used to do all these things in PowerShell anyway, you can do that. If you're fairly new to Microsoft 365 and you're just a random IT guy that was also given the Teams administration part, it has a detailed way of how to look it up in the user interface. So I really like that part. And in the end, they also give you some references. So they will look at Microsoft Learn information, for example, that gives you more background about the actual recommendation. Yeah, so that is the structure for every recommendation in that 500 and something page book, the 13 definition or recommendations that we have for Teams. This is how they're all written down. I am looking at the chat. I see Peter asking how many of you watching have used the CIS benchmarks. We got a few thumbs ups. That's cool. Paul says, I will be doing straight after this. Cool. Nice. And then we got a question. Do you have any tips on how we can quickly verify our compliance with CIS recommendations without having to go through each page? And that is a fantastic question, because you don't want to run all those PowerShell scripts by yourself. And as Cas says, at the end of the session, we might plug 1 or 2 companies or tools that you can use to actually do this for yourself. So cool, stay tuned. Nice. Cas, do we have any other?
I would only add here that if for whatever reason, so let's imagine a situation that you're following that CIS guidelines, but this is something that you implement in your organization. If for whatever reason you're not necessarily want to follow a recommendation as is and you want to do something opposite, I think it's very important to mention to keep an actual documentation and give your own rationale and your own impact statement if you disagree. So like keep a documentation of why you would not follow that particular recommendation. I think that's just a pro tip from me. That's it.
I think that is super important. And also add these recommendations to your governance documentation. And as Cas says, if you don't agree, you can add that there as well. So yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Cool. So
let's move on.
Yes, exactly. So that is how the CIS works, what they do, the recommendations. So now we can actually dive into the actual recommendations. And we've got 4 recommendations that we want to go through. The first one was from the chapter around teams and groups. The first one was ensure that only organizationally managed or approved public groups exist. And that was the first one that they added. This applies to E3 people, so that also applies to E5, of course. But this is a level 2 one. So this is a one for organizations that take security really seriously. Because what this actually says is that, do you want to have public groups or people being able to create public groups within your organization? I just had one customer where we ran into issues with public groups because they also have an email address, and people thought that they would be sending emails to that email address, but they actually got into a public group in Viva Engage, so everyone could see their attachments and their things that they've written down. So that was a big no-no. That was a big slap on the fingers. So it is important to think about this, to think if you want to do this, if you want to look at this, yes or no. So rationale, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to have this? So ensure that only organizationally managed and approved public groups exist. When a group has a public privacy, users may access data related to this group. So that is important. It's just open for everyone in your organization. Now, as Kasia said earlier, think about if you want to close this down or if you want to have this in your organization. Because if you're looking at Viva Engage, for example, that might be important if you want to keep that open, if you want people to be able to create open communities for your organization. So if we then look at the impact, this says if the recommendation is applied, group owners could receive more access requests than usual because they have to manually say, yes, you can be part of this. Especially regarding groups originally meant to be public. So this goes back to open Teams groups, Viva Engage communities. If you have a 5,000 people company, are you prepared, or is your group owner prepared to click yes 5,000 times if everybody wants to join this group? Yeah, so very important. If we then look at the audit, how can I check this? And this is what I really love. There are 2 ways to do this, either with the user interface. So you go to the admin and then you check on teams and groups and look at active teams and groups, and there you can check this. Or you can also use PowerShell, and so you can choose which one you like yourself. Then there's the remediation step. How do I fix this? If I want to follow this recommendation, how do I do this? These are the steps that you need to take if you want to do this. That's how you do it. And we also have some references, that reference to learn.microsoft.com articles. And it always also ends with, to which of our CIS controls does this link to? This might be important if your CISO is really following the CIS controls and that you need to prove why you want to do this based on what level or on what control this follows. So this might be one of the things that you want to follow. All right, Kas, do you want to do the next 2? So first one, we have Teams admin, and then the third one would be the one where we also have your demo.
Well, I don't want to like mess our presentation order, but I was thinking of switching them around because just being wary of the time, we have like 10 minutes left. So I don't know. Yes, I know the time flies.
But that's cool because we can just move through these because this is easy.
Right, sure.
But
So
you know what? Let's skip this one and let's go straight to the one with your demo.
yeah.
All right,
So
cool.
I will actually share my screen then, right?
Sure.
I will share my screen because then you can all see, Marijn, everybody can see my screen, just to confirm the most favorite sentence of the year. Right, so on the right hand side, you see the actual PDF. So you actually see the CIS benchmark document. So we are on the page 3019, and this is the recommendation, sorry, that I will be talking about. So ensure external access is restricted in the Teams admin center. And again, as you see, it's very similar to what Marijn was showing in the previous control. You have the description and profile applicability. So E3 is the minimum license requirement to kind of follow this configuration, but it's level 2. So it's, again, a bit more in-depth setting that you can control. There is a description, and I think it's important that they also add notes. So this benchmark, this document, just to make sure it's the latest one that we downloaded, is from September 2023. It's the version 3.0.0. I think this all came about, I think, in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the latest iteration. And for this particular control, you can see that as of December 2021, default for Teams external communication is set to people in my organization can communicate with Teams user whose accounts aren't managed by organization. So you may want to have a look. You may want to decide if this is something that you want to stick with or not. There is, of course, rationale and impact. But I wanted to show you in a very in an environment, basically, how we can follow the audit and the remediation. So as Marijn mentioned, we have the steps how we can audit this using the UI, and it's very, very simple to follow. So even if you don't have a lot of experience, if you're starting working with M365, perhaps, this is very simple to follow. So all we need to do is to go to Teams Admin Center, go to Users and External Access. On the left-hand side, you can see that I am in my Microsoft Teams Admin Center. I can go to Users, External Access. What's next? I need to look for basically this setting, Teams and Skype for business users in external organization. And we have that here. So at the moment, I have that setting that allow all external domains, perhaps something that we don't want to have, as mentioned in this control. But we can also check that using the PowerShell. And again, this is super, in my opinion, it's super simple also for people to start using PowerShell, because PowerShell does not have to be difficult, doesn't bite. Yes, it can do a lot of harm if you don't know what you're doing, but if you're following this guidelines in this benchmark, you should be fine. So I have my PowerShell open. I'm already connected to my Teams. So all I need to do is really just copy and paste this this commandlet here, the snippet, and I have all the same information that I have here in my admin center. Now I can change it in the UI, as mentioned in the benchmark, but I can also do it via PowerShell. I can remediate that setting. And what is actually funny here, I've noticed that only today. If I copy and paste this particular snippet, it's not going to work. And I don't know if you can very quickly spot what's wrong with this, but if I press enter, it's not going to work. See, I have an
disclaimer,
error.
I didn't see it. I didn't find it.
So let's go back to, I still have it copied, I think, but let's do it. What's wrong with this one is it just does not have the consistency in setting the value for the parameters. So all we need to do is just to adjust it slightly and then execute it. So basically that's done. And now if I refresh my Teams Admin Center, I should be able to see that change. So as you can see, now I'm blocking all external domains. I'm also blocking Teams accounts not managed by organization. It's very simple. It's very simple. So that's all you need to do if you want to if you want to follow the benchmark. But then again, be vigilant. And sometimes if you get an error like here, it's not because something is wrong with your tenant or with you. Sometimes it's just a wrongly written commandlet and then snippet of the code. So that's it. That's my super short demo. I don't really have much more to add here. If you have any questions, of course, pop them in the chat.
Amazing. That is very cool. So I'm just taking over again, showing my screen, rest of the presentation. So we have been talking about CIS. Now we also have the NIST cybersecurity framework that Cass knows a lot about.
Well, I would say that NIST is a bit more popular because it's much more comprehensive, it's much more elaborate, and a lot of public sector organizations are actually follow NIST more than CIS. However, it doesn't mean so let me say it like that. CIS is kind of seen as a bronze standard. It's not necessarily a gold standard in securing your environment and following a framework, but it's still a good standard, and it's usually seen as something that is more applicable for smaller organization or for, I don't know, consultants to perform like gap analysis or whatnot. But it's not necessarily always the truth. So I have been honored to work with like really large enterprises from all over the world. One of them was a huge elevator manufacturer. And let's say that they asked me to build some dashboards and reports to show how they are compliant with the CIS. So although they were like 100,000 users organization, they still were looking into the CIS recommendations. So it doesn't mean that it's a wrong standard to look at. It's probably just easier to start with. And if you don't have anything at the organization, I would suggest to look at the CIS first before you go into like ISIS or NIST or whatever.
Yeah, cool. Paul asks if there is a reference between CIS and ISO 27001 controls.
Yeah, so of course there's plenty of materials. I'm sure that we could provide that after the session easily. A few links that we find are the most applicable for all your questions. We're going to add them at the latest slide, and when you have access to this slide, you're going to be able to see that. But there was also a question about the tools or how you can quickly verify our compliance with CIS recommendations, right? So I want to answer that one. There is actually CIS tools. So you have the CIS CAT tool in the version Lite and Pro. Pro is the paid one, Lite is the free one. I didn't run it against the M365 benchmark. I'm not quite sure. I think it should be fine. So with all honesty, I would need to double check it myself. If anybody knows in the room, please let us know. But there's also a ton of vendors that are building software that would already have that within their software. So there's companies like Netflix, there is companies like Simeon Cloud that I recently got to know as well. So you could go and you could, let's say, or CoreView, for example. That's a snippet from CoreView, the dashboard that I built for my customers. That was more about Exchange, but you still have a lot of functionality in these kind of third-party tools where you can select how does my tenant how my security measures in my tenant respond to the certain framework. So in Simeon, I recently saw that you can just select CIS benchmark and it literally just pops up a list, shows you your configurations, and you can just click via UI, not using any code. You can select yes, no, true, false, whatever. It's pretty handy. Marijn, do you have anything to add here?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think we can wrap things up here. So, is it right for my organization? I think you already kind of talked about this in our previous slide for NIST versus CIS versus NIST. CIS might be better for smaller organizations, while NIST might be better for larger organizations. Easy to implement, I think so, because there are a bunch of recommendations that you can just easily follow. There are tools that you can use to easily make an assessment, how far you are already there. How it compares to other frameworks, I think you already talked about that as well in the previous slide. Any other things that we want to give away to conclude? Now is the time. No.
I think that's it from my side. So if anybody has any other questions, it's the last minutes that we can answer them. Peter, if you want to add anything, you're the expert here on the CIS as well. But if not, then I would say that's it from our side.
All right.
Oh,
Cool.
thank you both. I actually don't have anything to add really. In fact, I've learned a few things myself about CIS in your sessions, so I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful stuff.